The following program contains the opinions of the host, guests, and call-in participants. These do not necessarily represent the views of this show's distributors or sponsors. This program may contain obscene, profane, or otherwise objectionable language. Viewer discretion is advised. Howdy ho, everybody. Coming to your cordless from glamorous Minneapolis. It's Monday night, February 23rd, 2026. I'm Jim Peters. Welcome to another edition of Jim Peters at Night. This is show number 318. If you're keeping score at home, someday there'll be a test. Our guest tonight, our old friend, the former editor of Hustler magazine, journalist, film director, provocateur, purveyor of stuff, and all around our favorite pervert from joining us from Maple Grove, Minnesota. Here's Tim Conaway. Hi, Tim.
Yay! Jim, your opening, it says there's obscene, profane, and objectionable language.
Yeah.
But to me, no language is obscene or profane.
No,
all language is protected. And if it's objectionable, that means somebody out there is objecting to it. And in that case, fuck them.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you. So
I guess it's like warning people. Now, every movie we watch on streaming warns us about flashing lights.
Yeah. Right.
Because apparently people with epilepsy watch movies and they're flashing lights. They have to be warned ahead of time.
Oh, do you remember the drama Andromeda Strain? The whole plot was based on somebody who had reacted to flashing lights.
Right. Yeah. She blanked out and missed the one little thing that could have saved them all, saved the world.
Yeah.
And
I'm sorry, I interrupted you. My apologies.
No, that's all I wanted to say. Is flashing lights. They warn us about. They also, sexual content, which sometimes means a couple of people kiss and then the camera fades away. And it's like, so that the sexual content there is, we know that after that kiss they're going to have sex.
Yeah.
But we don't actually get to see anything.
No, we don't. No.
Why warn? And then a lot of times they warn us that there's going to be language, which, I think is, you don't have to warn us about that, but it's good to know that there's going to be language because otherwise it's a silent film.
Well put. Leave it to you to figure that out.
These are the things I notice.
Yeah.
While I'm sitting around accomplishing nothing.
Well, I actually was thinking about this just about a couple hours before we went on the air here about, you and I have talked before. I asked you, is Hustler magazine still producing a pulp magazine? And you didn't know, and I didn't know, but I have something I want to show you here. This is from their website. The answer is yes, they are. They're still selling it.
Still doing it. Yeah, well, that's dumb.
Yeah.
But Kathy Griffin, is that somebody we know?
I don't think that's the same Kathy Griffin, but I have to tell you, hold on, I got to look at the actual because the one thing it says here, it says on the cover, it says, "I fucked my nanny. Good help is hard." It sounds like something you guys would have written 15 years ago or 20 years ago,
Yeah. Well, and the thing, and then the follow-up is I got sued by my nanny. And so that saga.
And I pointed this out before. You were the editor of Hustler at the height of its popularity. I mean, a lot of that is attributable to you and your twisted mind.
Well, no, not to me. At the real height of it, I wasn't the editor. I was never the actual editor. That was always Larry. I had that title, but it was a group effort, and it's to me, and it was odd because Larry was one of those guys like Der Fuhrer, that guy in the White House with all that fucking bleached muskrat sitting on his head.
Who are you talking about? Oh, are you talking about the president, El Presidente?
Yeah, Der Fuhrer, Furrer. He's got that fur mass on his head,
Okay.
fur pile. Anyway, that if you pit the workers against each other, if they think they're in a competition, that you'll get better results. But actually, by working together, we all came up with stuff. There are things during those years in the early 70s or mid 70s, mid to late 70s, and again in the mid to late 80s, the peaks of success that maybe you could point to one person and say they started that idea.
Uh-huh.
It was everybody else pitched in something to the idea and made it really fully blossom. So the thing that I could take credit for was I'm a real organized kind of guy. So I streamlined and organized a lot of things so we could get a lot more done, with the people that we had.
Yeah.
And later on, in the 80s, the company wanted to expand from just porn magazines because of the ebb and flow of magazine sales. So the idea was to add or start 4 magazines every year. And in order to do that, we needed a platform that we could do that efficiently and economically. And so I built that platform. So if there's anything in all that time that I would take credit for, it was building the platform that let us grow like that.
But your title was managing editor, right?
No, it was executive editor for a while in the 70s. I mean, I eventually got to that title. I started out just as a staff writer on the magazine, and then I was editorial director from the mid 80s to the mid 90s.
Yeah, and I mean, Larry didn't actually have the title of editor in chief, did he? He was the publisher, right?
He was publisher and editor in chief.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Because he's the guy sitting in his office throwing out ideas to do something with him, right?
Stuff, and we were supposed to. He wanted stuff to him, didn't like, and up until he got, and he later on, this was after the mid 90s. He came back and was he was not in full self, but he was able to participate again. And I'm sure with Hustler that it was the same as before. But he used to read everything that went into the magazine, letters to the editor, caption, anything that went into the magazine. He read it before it went in, so that he was a full participant in it, and that everything had to meet his approval. Or he'd come in and say, "Who's the dumb son of a bitch that put this in my magazine?" And then I could raise my hand.
Well, I've made fun of you over the years about the fact that you picked the pictures of the beaver hunt, and I'm going through the Hustler website, and they make porn films now, and they're on a film, they're on a sequel. It's Beaver Hunt 6. Thought you'd want to know.
Oh, good. Well,
I have no idea what the movies are about.
Well, I'm sure that they're just people out there in the world, average people out there in the world that want to share their sexual activities with the rest of the world. That's what Beaver Hunt was. It was just guys sending in pictures of their girlfriends naked.
Yeah.
And people say, well, okay, you edited Beaver Hunt, but it was not as challenging as people might think it was.
I'm sure. I bet it wasn't. You have been ensconced in history though by Rob White, who does a whole routine about. I mean, have you heard it? He does a routine about
Yeah,
sending his wife's ex-wife's pictures to Beaver Hunt, and that she won. She was picked, which I thought was kind of funny.
yeah. Well, that was the tough part, is picking somebody, because the photographers, Larry had all these photographers on staff. They were exclusive to Hustler. And these guys were shot in the ass with themselves. And they were good. What they were good, they weren't necessarily technically good as photographers, but they were good at bringing out the heat from the models.
Uh-huh.
And that's what counted.
Yeah.
Because I had seen some of these same models in shoots in other magazines, and they weren't nearly as hot.
So I've never asked you this. I have a question. So obviously people sent in pictures of their wives and their girlfriends, but when it actually once you picked the model for that month, when did you send a professional photographer out to
Well, that was the thing. We didn't pick a Beaver Hunt winner every month. We picked one about every 4 months or something like
okay. Yeah.
to keep, everybody got $100 if they were selected for that issue. And, we had, I forget how many we had, 10, 12, 20 of them, something like that.
Right.
A few pages of them. And then we would pick one. And then at that point, they were flown in to Los Angeles, and they, were shot at the studio by one of the pros. So,
yeah, I didn't know that. I didn't. I thought maybe you were just running the pictures that were sent to you. So yeah.
Well, yeah, the initial pictures, the snapshots and whatever, were just them. But the winner that we picked out of the Beaver Hunts were then, came out, and we did a full spread on them.
Yeah.
So to speak.
Speaking of spread, you know what's going on in Mexico, right?
Measles? I don't know what's spreading in Mexico.
So I was just talking to my wife just before we went on the air here about the fact that my sister is a retired travel agent, and she was going to go to Mexico this week. She didn't. She put it off because of the weather. Believe it or not, not anything. But she's been. Matter of fact, I think I'm pulling this out on my butt. I can't really remember. I think she took us on a family outing to Mexico a few years ago, and for some reason I couldn't or didn't go. But she's always saying, and I always say, well, it's kind of unsafe, isn't it? You got the cartel. She said, no, it's fine. You stay in the resort, everything's going to be okay. Just don't wander around, blah 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 blah. Okay, fine. And then now they kill this guy who's apparently was the most wanted drug cartel guy in Mexico, and both the Mexicans and it appears the U.S. officials colluded with him. They killed him, and now the cartel is exacting their revenge, and no one's leaving the airport. I don't know if you've seen this. The airport at Guadalajara is a madhouse. People are running around, and they don't even know what to do.
Yeah. Well, that's the stupid approach. We're going to cut off the head of the snake, but unfortunately, it's not a snake they're dealing with. It's a group of people, an organization of people. And so, yeah, you get rid of the one guy. Now somebody's got to rise to the top. And it's either there's an organized process of advancement, there's a replacement program in there, or these guys are going to vie for it.
Yeah.
This is my gripe about the drug enforcement thing is, they don't take guys off the street, or they'll pull a guy in and try to make him an informant, or, because they're trying to get information to get to the head of the snake. And it's like, if you arrested all the guys who are selling drugs on the street, and you put them in jail, and there'll be guys that replace them, but at some point, and it wouldn't take very long, there'll be guys who's like, shit, every guy that tries to sell drugs on the street gets arrested and put in jail. If you stop that, you stop the money. And if you stop the money, that's what it is. It's not the snake, it's the fuel that drives the engine of these things. if you stop the money coming in, and so you clean out the bottom. Of course, that's a lot of work. It's much better for a bunch of people to sit in a room and say, "Oh, we're trying to get information, to get the top guy." And it's like, and the top guys are usually protected, unless you go in and kill them, like you're talking about. So, yeah, stupid approach to doing this stuff.
You ever get the impression? Sometimes I think that people don't pay enough attention to the concept of waking the sleeping giant. It's like, I mean, in foreign relations, this has generally been a thing about the fact now people realize, well, if you take out a regime like of a country, and Iran might be a good example, but they might be an exception here too. If you take out the regime, what replaces it a lot of times is even worse. The only thing with Iran right now is that people really can't imagine it being any worse. And I gotta admit, I can't either. Maybe it could. I don't know, but that's so maybe they're an exception. But as a general rule, a lot of times what replaces something is even worse than what they took out.
Oh yeah, well, and it depends who's doing the replacing and all that process. But yeah, and sometimes you got to throw them out. But in my I'm working on this. I hope to have it ready sometime in the middle of the year. But my Sons of the Apocalypse website is all the truthers and all the paramilitarists, all the these people they're ready for the big conflict to come. They're armed and they know what to do. They're ready for the conflict, but nobody is ready for or has a plan for what do you do after the conflict.
Well, that's right. You're absolutely correct.
Yeah. How do you establish some kind of order, and how do you prevent just the same shit from happening again? And so I'm working out that program. And
but sir, I'll just throw this out. I'm starting to think that humans, we're just stupid. We don't recognize history. We don't, we just do the same stupid shit over and over again. That's what it seems like.
Oh yeah, pretty much. And I said it on the show before, and I am an elitist. I'm arrogant. Go ahead and call me all these things, but 90% of people cannot lead themselves, cannot make up their own mind, cannot make their own way. They have to be shown what to do.
Still there?
They're told what to do.
Yeah.
Even when they're told what to do, they're reluctant to, they're scared to move ahead. There's another 5% above them that can do things on their own, but they can't lead. And then there's 5% of the world that can take care of itself, can make their own decisions, can make their own way, can make things work. And from that, we have to have leaders, but most of that 5% say, I don't want to deal with that shit. I don't want to deal.
Right.
I don't want to have 90% of the population looking to me for what to do. If they can't do it on their own, let them fall by the wayside,
This is one of the great problems with our political system. Anybody of any real accomplishment doesn't want to have anything to do with it.
Yeah.
So basically, we end up with a whole elected class of losers. That's basically what they are.
Well, I saw something the other day on the internet. One of these guys, some representative, said, if we had term limits, the government would end up with nothing but mediocrity. And somebody else posted, well, that would be better than what we have now.
That's funny. That's well put.
Yeah, and but they're less than mediocre. The people are in there cannot or could not survive in a real world, in a real competitive world. They would not be at the top of the food chain, and they can go in there and they can do insider trading because the law doesn't apply to them. There are all kinds of laws that don't apply to these people. They can accept tons of money from corporations, from any company. It's campaign donations, but after the campaign, after the election, a lot of that money can be used in different ways.
Yeah.
So they're in there serving themselves. They give one thought to the people. They're fighting about this party versus that party when they should be taking care of the people. What this party's done and what that party won't do. And it's like, shut up and take care of business.
Yeah.
So yeah, mediocrity would be a step up if we could get that. But the I don't know if this is the 9th or 12th time around that somebody's floated a bill to make insider trading illegal, or to make even trading on the stock market illegal for people that are in office. And we'll see that when you hit the dump.
You brought this up here, and the thing is, this really bears repeating. Nancy Pelosi has had a better stock picking history, more successful than any single hedge fund or person that's ever worked on Wall Street.
Yeah, it's amazing her insight into that field.
Yes, it is. Right, that's right. It is amazing, isn't it? She's so good. Where did she get that talent?
Particularly because she's not very bright, and but she's got that unusual Democratic thing in California. That she's from one of those Democratic centers in California that always are picking Democrats to come out of there. Same with Los Angeles. That most of the state itself would be conservative, but most of the population dictates where the representatives come from. And so there are only, I think it's still only 40 seats in the California legislature, and it's a uni-panel legislature. It's
right.
They're not two segments. So those people. When I was living in California, I was early on. I think 37 of the 40 of those people were lawyers. By profession, if you will. It's just no wonder that all the companies have left there. I mean, since the time I was there, from the mid 80s, companies were leaving the state left and right for various reasons, but it just wasn't favorable to a place to do business.
Right.
And so now it's hard to imagine what's left other than some that are kind of stuck there because of the nature of their business. But
and Tim, what do you think of this? What they're calling it, the wealth tax, but it's actually not a tax; it's confiscation. First of all, I constantly have to bring this up. People talking about we're going to tax the billionaires. There's only 1,000 billionaires in the entire United States. There's 180 billionaires that live in California. Actually, they're all leaving because of this. So I don't know what the number is now, but that's what it was last year. So you got 180 people, and the idea is to take 5% of their assets, not their income, their assets. And I got to admit, I just think this is appalling. Not to mention the fact, this is the part that really bugs me. You're not, relatively speaking, you're not going to raise that much money. You aren't.
Oh yeah, overall, because of the limited number of these people.
Right.
But for the government to seize assets under the guise of tax or whatever is not constitutional. But then these people, when they've got the money, they got to fight it to the Supreme Court. They got to get it out of the California courts. Well, they got to go through the California courts, but they got to get it into the federal courts.
Yeah.
Take it to the Supreme Court and get it killed. So that's going to take, a while, but maybe they can get injunctions to hold that up. But yeah, taxing, and for me, even the graduated income tax based on, the ability to pay thing, to me is not fair. If you're more successful, why should you be punished by paying more taxes?
Right.
If you're, everybody should pay a flat 10%, and you're done with it.
Yes, I totally agree completely.
I would actually like 17%. I think that would bring in a good number, but a flat 10% across the board, and this is on income. Business taxes have to be handled differently because of expenses and that kind of stuff. But on personal income, 10% across the board would generate nearly as much as the tax revenue that comes in now. And you could reduce the IRS by a whole bunch.
Right.
Of
You
people.
you could literally do the whole thing on a postcard, right?
Yeah, you reduce. I mean, your employer takes 10% out and they send it in and it's done.
Right.
You don't have to file anything. You don't have to fill anything. You don't have to go through any of that kind of stuff. So it's easier all the way across the board. And if you look at the amount of personal income taxes that are generated by the way it's done now, and then you apply that formula to the amount of income that's out there. Now, this means all the people earning the least, because they don't have to pay any taxes, but in fact they do. You're not a company, a business, an employer is not required to deduct taxes and send them to the federal government. Each individual is required to pay his or her own taxes, but the federal government doesn't want to deal with it that way, so they encourage companies to do that, and the companies that don't do that get audited, and other pressure from them. But the people earning the least still get money deducted from their payroll,
right?
And then they have to collect it back again, next April or next beginning of next year, send in the forms and get all that kind of stuff. So it's not like the amount that they're living on would be any different. It's just that the following January or February, they wouldn't get a check for $800 or whatever it amounts to, because I've been there years ago. Yeah. It doesn't amount to a whole lot.
No,
that they would get back. So it doesn't hurt. A 10% flat tax on everybody doesn't hurt the poor, and it doesn't punish the rich.
If you don't mind my saying so, even if you're that poor, you should have some investment in the government. If everyone's going to invest, you should still put in a little money. I mean, I think
exactly. Yeah.
I think what you're talking about makes perfect sense, but I don't understand why no one won't do it.
Well, because again, you get in Washington, you get all these, you've got all these people in the Treasury Department, and you got all the CPAs, you've got all the, accountant world, with their lobbies and their PACs and, discouraging the government from doing that kind of stuff. But most of the thing, a flat tax on business wouldn't be fair, and it wouldn't really work correctly. So that's, you would have to separate those two out.
You're right. They're already separated, basically. I mean, so
yeah, right. Exactly. But so anyway, there's taxing. Everybody should pay in because everybody gets services from the government.
Yeah.
And then there's the Social Security tax, which I have a long-term plan for getting rid of Social Security. You can't just axe it right now, but you can switch to instead of the government taking out a requirement that people invest a certain percentage of their income, for their retirement, and then if they don't, and the day comes when they're out of work or they're retired, they don't have anything, that's on them. But we would have to wean ourselves. It'd take about 25 years, I think, to wean ourselves off of the Social Security basket.
And any change to that's going to take 25 years, whatever you do.
Oh yeah, well, but you'd have to slowly work it out, and that's the other problem is if you had a sitting Congress and a president who went along with this 25-year plan, and then 4 years later you get a different bunch of idiots in, then they could scrap the plan. and then the whole thing goes to hell. But yeah, it would have to be a long term and careful transition into some other form of retirement savings.
That's like, I deal a lot with the UFO stuff, and maybe you buy or don't buy all of it. But the reason I'm using this as an example is that supposedly people say that some of the presidents kept out of the loop on the UFO situation because they're quote unquote temporary employees. They're not going to be there forever.
Yeah. Yeah,
all the bureaucrats, they are. So
yeah. Well, that's one of the things, because I watch your show, and I watch these UFO guys, and they talk about some of the government guys who are in government, and they've seen the documents or whatever, but they're not at liberty to talk about it and stuff.
Yeah.
And it's like, why is that? That's one of those secrets that you're not at liberty to talk about. I can understand not talking about our nuclear program, or not talking about our guided missile program, or our jets and bombers, that are under development. But you're not allowed to talk about the documents that you saw where somebody talked about being, probed by aliens.
Well, the rationale is supposedly national security, but I think that's kind of bullshit. But
yeah, I don't see what the national security is. If these extraterrestrials have the capabilities that we think they do, and they wanted to target us, there isn't a damn thing we could do about it.
Oh, we'd be dead long ago. I think that's almost the argument for the fact that if they're not benevolent, they're neutral. Because they could kill the whole planet in half an hour. That's what I figure.
Right? Yeah. So national security. It's like, if we release this, and then they would have to come and wipe us out because we would know the secret.
So I assume you've been following what's been going on the past couple of weeks about the fact that Obama got on this podcast and said the aliens are real, and then Trump got on Air Force One and said, well, he violated his security oath, and then Jared Moskowitz, the representative from Florida, said, well, how could it be classified if it's not true? Well, geez, wow, there's some logic.
Yeah. And how long does that security oath last? And how many secret documents does it allow you to take to your resort?
I don't have to tell you, even beyond this subject, everyone says one of the main problems in Washington is that everything's overclassified. Everything.
Yeah. Well, you're right. When Trump was in office the first time, there was something about, Jared Kushner was one of his advisors, his son-in-law. And there was complaints that he was having access to documents that he didn't have a security clearance for. And it was, well, why can't this guy get a security clearance? He's the president's son-in-law. And it said that there were, at that point, 70,000 people waiting to receive their security clearances so they could do the jobs that they were being hired to do.
I didn't know this. I never heard this.
And I thought, that's 70,000 people waiting. It didn't say how many people already had. And I thought, why do we even need 70,000 people to have security clearances for stuff going on in Washington?
Yeah.
I mean, you got military stuff going on. You got, in the intelligence community stuff going on. And then what the hell else is there? But 70,000 people waiting with God knows how many people already having security clearance. Way too many secrets.
Yeah.
Groucho Marx said this on one of his, shows. What was, I can't remember the name of that.
You Bet Your Life.
You Bet Your Life show.
Yeah.
But he says the government shouldn't have any secrets from the citizens.
Yeah.
And I agree with that. I know that there's this international stuff, but basically, you don't need 70,000 more people to, keep secrets in government, at any level of government.
Yeah, you're probably talking about, you're right. There's probably at least 250,000 people that already have it. If 70,000 people are waiting in line, that's absurd.
Yeah. And, to handle this document or that document, which is another part of, there are too many people in the bureaucracy because this guy stamps a sheet of paper and hands it to the next guy to stamp a sheet of paper and hand it to the next guy, or however that works, because we can't have enough bureaucrats slowing everything down and using stamps.
yeah, right. Yeah. I'm going to change the subject here because I think you're the perfect person. And you were talking about this at the top about freedom of speech. So you're a film director. So did you follow about what's going on the BAFTA Awards this week? What happened?
Oh, no. Fortunately, I miss a lot of this stuff. I do look at some news, but mainly I just looking to see when this horrible cold winter weather is going away. So,
oh man, and those people they're just getting snow. No, literally snowed this today. I mean, it's terrible. It's awful.
Everywhere. This is one of the worst winters ever.
Yeah, we didn't really get a lot of snow here in Minnesota, but it's been cold.
Yeah.
And I've told people in the past, usually we in January have 2 or 3 days where the high is 20 below. That didn't happen this year, but where the high got to maybe 5 or 8 below, but it was like 10 days in a row. I mean, it was way longer.
It's miserable. We stepped out today, to go to the gym, and man, it was like brutal out there. And I want to go someplace else. I don't want to live here anymore, but it's not up to me.
It's not up to me either. I think I'm nuts. I think we're nuts to live here. But yeah, I'm in the same predicament. Anyway, at the BAFTA Awards, now for people who don't know, the BAFTA Awards are essentially the British Academy Awards, right? And there's this movie called I Swear. That's about a guy who has extreme Tourette's syndrome, right? Now, if you and we can talk about Tourette's in a minute. So anyway, this guy, the real guy that this movie was based on, they invited him to present an award, and he got up on stage and basically let off a Tourette's rant, which supposedly, and I believe it, these people are incapable of voluntarily stopping. And he called all the black people on stage the N-word. But here's a really weird thing, Tim. And I want to point out to people, this is really true. Tim is an extremely good live television director. It's kind of his thing. So this was live on tape. It wasn't broadcast live. They broadcast it 2 hours later, and they didn't beep it out. What the hell? What are you doing? It's like, what are you doing?
Well, let the guy talk. I mean, you make a movie about this thing.
Right, that's right.
And you decide to honor the movie, and then you bring the guy up who has the problem that the movie is dealing with, and here's the real world. So
yeah, right.
But British TV doesn't edit out as much as
no, they don't. That's
US
true.
TV too. But there was a woman who lived in my neighborhood in LA who had Tourette's syndrome, an older woman, and she was really a nice lady. But I took the bus back and forth because driving in LA was terrible, and I had to go up Wilshire Boulevard and back on Wilshire Boulevard, which is the busiest street in all of Los Angeles. So I took the bus, and I had to walk in about 4 or 5 blocks to where I lived, and I would walk past this woman's house, and she would be out. She had a nice little garden in her front yard. And she would say, "Oh, hello, sir. Fuck you, sir." And she was just being polite. And her husband sometimes would be there. "Oh, I'm sorry." I said, "No, I understand." I said, "I don't take it the wrong way." But yeah, she, people with that can't help doing that. And if they get wound up, then they get on a string of stuff.
Did you ever see the movie Deuce Bigalow, Male Gigolo? Did you ever see it?
Yes.
I was never impressed with Rob Schneider until that movie came out, because I got to admit, I think that movie is brilliantly funny. And there's that extended scene in there where he goes on this date with this woman who has Tourette's, and they're driving in her convertible, and she's swearing up a blue streak, and I gotta admit, maybe I'm just easy, and I know I'm easy, but I thought it was absolutely hilarious. She has Tourette's, and she's calling everybody motherfuckers, and it's like, oh my god. It just
Yeah.
on and on and on, and that's the real funny part about it. It doesn't stop.
Well, when you get it going on, let
Yeah,
it
right.
let it wind up. But yeah,
Hey,
but
let me ask you, have you been in LA since they opened the subway system?
no, no, that was after I was there. They had some limited stuff, and the
Yeah.
trains were just getting started. In the subways, but I haven't been in Southern California since like 2000. God, okay, don't let me say this wrong. Yeah, since about 2003, and I wasn't in LA at that time.
Uh-huh.
So
I think the last time I was back there 7 years ago, and I did an experiment. I tried not renting a car. I said, "I'm gonna see if I can use this subway thing to get around," and basically I could. I was pretty amazed. Now, I've been told that since that time, the system's really gone to hell. That's what I've heard. But then 7, 8 years ago, it basically worked. Although talking about Wilshire Boulevard, I think this is still true. They're still working on it. You could only take the subway basically from downtown to Western Avenue. You couldn't go any farther west than that.
hmm,
And that's the last big line they have to finish, and I guess they're still working on it. But
yeah, yeah. Well, I can understand it going to hell because the politicians in the city, were always dumbasses, and they said so they got these grand plans. They set all this kind of stuff up, and then um, by the time it gets going, the thing is inadequate. It's out of
yeah.
date. It's all that kind of stuff. They can't plan ahead more than 2 years. It seems like.
And this
Uh,
thing with the fires at Palisades, no, that was kind of your neighborhood, right? You lived
yeah. Oh, yeah. That was. I watched the Genesis golf tournament over the weekend. It's played at Riviera, which is just on the eastern edge of the Palisades. But yeah,
right.
we lived we were less than a mile from where all that burned.
So 17,000 homes were lost, and so far, I think only 3 have been rebuilt. I
Yeah.
mean, it's unconscionable. So,
Well, it's
okay, Thanks to Tim Conaway there for joining us today. I love talking to that guy. Always entertaining, fascinating life too. How many people can say they they were, you know, edited the largest porn magazine in the world at the time anyway? You know, I mean, magazines have pretty much gone away. I don't have to tell you. I there's not even in my local supermarkets anymore. They no longer even have a magazine rack. Basically people don't buy them, but because it's all online. It's amazing the number of newspapers have gone online now too. If I'm right, this month, both I think the Atlanta Journal Constitution and the Philadelphia, is it the Inquirer or the Daily News, is dropping their print publications and going strictly online. So it's a changing world, friends. It's time for the snooze news from Monday, February 23rd. Here's something you didn't hear. Then that's what I'm doing here. I like to do the news that nobody talks about. You probably heard about this guy named Jesse Van Roosteller. He was from the guy from Tumbler Ridge, British Columbia. He shot up, if I'm right, a church, if I'm right. Transgender mass shooter. Of course, I was going to say, isn't that redundant? But, that's an insult. However, it is astonishing the percentage of shooters that are transgender. I mean, it's way above per capita background. Not even close. It's unbelievable. At any rate, this didn't make the news. He spent a lot of time talking to Chat GTP about how to kill people and his thoughts. And of course, I hope I don't have to tell you this. All these AI services, they log everything you type in and or say. If you're doing voice enabling. And at ChatGPT, it was his prompts were concerning enough to the AI bot, AI itself, that it kicked it over to a human. Apparently, ChatGPT has a system whereas that if people start posting really crazy shit, it turns it over to a human person, turns the conversation over. And that happened to this Jesse fellow. To the point where they actually banned his account. They closed his account automatically because it was too what he wanted, the information he wanted, and what he was saying was too disturbing. The real question is, should they have alerted the police? They did not. They didn't, but they knew something was up with this guy. Their reasons for not alerting the police is because they don't want people to be timid in discoursing with their AI if they think that AI is going to turn it over to police. And not only that, it's not clear to most people that they think, well, if the AI turns them over to the police, the actual AI did. No, the people running the AI did. In other words, they have a control. Like I said, if what you're telling the AI gets weird enough, they turn the conversation over to a human person. And the human people, in this case, banned his account or had to decide if they're going to tell the police about it. They decided not to. And it's a tough call. I totally understand what they're getting at, but I just wanted you guys to know how this works. Now, I don't know if the other AI services have that sort of control. I have no idea, but ChatGPT does. So anyway, they knew something was up with this guy to the point where they actually closed his account. They wouldn't let him post anymore. But they did not tell the police. And so he went up and killed a bunch of people. Now, there's no telling. You can't tell in foresight whether that's going to happen. You really can't. So I don't put a lot of guilt on these people. It's like that's hindsight's always 2020, but I brought this up mostly because I wanted you to understand how these services work. So it's not entirely, it's not entirely up to the AI to decide what happens. They at some point, at least ChatGPT will turn it over to a real person. That's the Open AI company. Meanwhile, at Cape Canaveral, they scrapped the launch of Armistice 2 for I think the 8th time or 11th time. I couldn't find the count in any of the news articles on this, believe it or not. I think they just given up keeping track. If I'm right, it's at least 8 that this is the 8th time they've scrubbed the launch. A problem with the helium fuel leaking again. So this is going to be the first time since 1972 that humans have gone to the moon, but they're not landing. As a matter of fact, they don't even have a lander on board. They can't land. But the idea is that they would go around the moon, supposedly because of the position of the moon and the Earth, and their starting point is they're going to be these. This would be the farthest humans had ever gone out into space, supposedly. Now they've scheduled the March. Is it March 6th of it? Is it? I didn't write that out. I'm pulling that out of my butt here. They've rescheduled the launch for March 6th. You have to understand that because of there's so many factors involved here, they just can't go the next day. They can't do that. It has to do with the revolution of the moon around the Earth, where the Earth is at that point. There's all sorts of factors you have to take into account. So usually they have to put it off every time they cancel it. They have to put it off a couple weeks for all that stuff to line up again. That's usually what happens here. But yeah, it's not, and I can't give them too much shit because they're being careful. And the reason the Challenger shuttle exploded because they weren't careful. Everybody at Raytheon who designed the engines for that shuttle knew that shuttle was going to explode. There's a apocryphal story about the fact that just before they launched, a bunch of some engineer yelled down the hall at Raytheon, "Hey, come watch the Challenger blow up." Yeah, they knew it was going to happen. The O-rings on the Challenger weren't rated to be used below 40 degrees, and I think the temperature was 32 at when they launched it. They knew it was going to happen, and it did. It happened. So do you need 2 years of investigation of that? No, they rushed the launch for publicity purposes. That's what they did, and so 7 astronauts were killed, including Christine. What was her name? Frawley, the woman who was a school teacher. She wasn't a professional astronaut, and it was probably not a pretty death either, because it appears that even though the shuttle behind them blew up, the actual command capsule of the shuttle did not, and it's spent 9 minutes falling into the ocean. So they spent 9 minutes knowing they were going to die. Wonderful. That's fantastic. Yeah. Aren't you glad that you're probably falling asleep right now? All right, this is near and dear to my heart because this gentleman has been on the show. John Greenwald runs the Black Vault. He's been a guest on this program. And the Black Vault is a website, and you go to theblackvault.com, where he has collected, through the Freedom of Information Act, he's basically made a full-time living out of this, millions of documents that purporting to the UFO phenomena that he's got from Congress or from the Library of Congress or the National Archives or wherever it is. And people ask me, Jim, why do you think the extraterrestrials are real? Because there's a shitload of evidence. That's why. I'm not pulling this out of my butt. It's not some feeling I have. And Greenwald has most of it. He has, I think there's something like 3 million documents on his website. Well, this weekend they all disappeared. Every single one of them. One of his servers, he still hadn't figured out what happened. One of his servers either got hacked or in some routine maintenance that a server company was doing, they accidentally wiped it, although they say they didn't. But that's a distinct possibility. He doesn't know what happened here. And if you've used Linux servers, you understand how this works. I'm going to explain this. On Linux servers, you give files permissions. Now, Windows servers kind of sort of tack this on as an afterthought at some point, but it started on Linux servers where it works really well. You give files permissions on who can and can't either access the files or change them, right? And so not only was his entire server wiped, he noticed that some of the directory permissions were changed. I would say, based on the way he described this, and he won't actually come out and say this outright, although he said it was a distinct possibility, I think he got hacked. And not only that, this happened the day after President Trump announced that he was going to have a bunch of people in the military start collecting files on UFOs the day after this. Now, luckily, he had the files backed up. So as of today, I guess that server, he's back up and running. But he said it was hundreds of gigabytes of data and millions of files. However, I'll tell you, if you're running a Linux server, it's fairly easy. If he said he had thousands of directories, but if all those directories are in one single directory, it's easy with one single command to wipe them all out. That's simple. And people say, well, Jim, Linux servers get hacked all the time. That's not really true. Well, they do, but there's a caveat there. And it reminded me of a friend of mine asked me years ago when I was working on a project, a very, very large project. And he said, you can't keep this secure. He said, Chase Bank can't keep it secure. How can you? And I explained to him, this is how this works. Linux has been in development for 20 years. And unlike Windows, where they rewrite half the code base every 3 years when they put a new version out, they've never done that. Linux has been perfected and perfected and perfected. It is at the point now where unless you have a password, you can't get into a Linux server, period. There's no way around this, none. But so the thing is, people say, well, how does Chase Bank get hacked? Here's how they get hacked. It's called social engineering. Somebody gets on the phone, they start calling around a bunch of departments saying, I lost my password for server number 26. Do you have it? And sooner or later, someone will cough it up. So they get in using a password because they get a password from somebody that shouldn't have given them one. That's how this works. But the thing is, the thing with Greenwald and also the projects I've worked with, the counter to my friend was that, I'm working with a company with 6 people, only 2 of us know the passwords. The thing is, it's the same with Greenwald. I don't know how many employees he has. I don't think he has any. I think he does this all on his own. And I'm sure he's the only person with the password. So the fact that he got hacked would be very unusual. Now, a lot of times somebody from the server company can hack in because they have overarching credentials to your server, the server you're renting. And almost everybody rents a server. You're not going to run a server out of your house. That's crazy for all sorts of reasons. I won't even get into that. But at any rate, his entire website, all those millions of documents were suddenly disappeared. So, and like I said, also, it was the day after Trump announced this. So, and also there's a lot of people are talking about Trump's announcement. There's an article, or this was actually News Nation. They posted a video on YouTube, and the title of the video is Trump's promised UFO disclosure, a potential Pandora's box. And it is. Excuse me. And here's the reason. And I was talking to a bunch of people this weekend, and they agreed with me. So the thing is, Trump's presidency is so contentious, at least for half of the country. The other half seems to love him, but you got to understand, half the country doesn't. That there's a good possibility that Trump stood up to a podium and said, we're being visited by people from outer space, that he would be mocked and ridiculed, that he would not be believed. Because there's a lot of people, I don't know if you've noticed this, a lot of people don't like any single thing Trump does, I was talking to a friend of mine today about the fact that, and he's not a Trump supporter at all, even though he's a conservative. And I explained to him, he knows I am, and am I going to watch the State of the Union tomorrow? By the way, I'm going to announce this at the end. We aren't doing a show tomorrow, not because of the State of the Union. I have to go attend to my 101-year-old mother. That's the reason. I'm kind of glad. I mean, we'll talk about it on a Wednesday, but because I don't know if I want to watch it. I gotta admit, I don't particularly care to listen to the president talk, even though I'm a supporter, because I think he does more good stuff than bad stuff. And look at all the presidents we've had in the last 40, 50 years. Most of them don't do anything. Have you ever noticed this? I mean, I stand by my statement here. Since Reagan, the only 2 presidents who've gotten anything of any substance done are Clinton and Trump. That's it. And it's been 40 years. No, it's been 25. But still, so, I'm not particularly enthused to listen to the president talk. But if I agree with this assessment. If he stood up at a podium and said the extraterrestrials are here, I don't know if people would believe him, or even worse, they'd make fun of it. it would just zoom over everybody's head. So a guy named Gary Skittle, who's one of the whistleblowers in Congress, he has proposed that what he thinks is going to happen, and looks more and more likely that this is going to be put in place, is that there will be a committee formed to release these documents, just like there was a committee formed to release the JFK documents. I don't know if that was true for the Epstein files per se, but there will be a congressional committee that will be formed to release these documents, and they will make a recommendation to the president, and they will tell the president that based on what we have and what we've seen, extraterrestrials are visiting Earth, and the president will relay that, and that's what will be can essentially be disclosure, and the world will know. Now, do I think it's important that the world knows? I don't really know. And it's a weird thing is, I talk about this all the time. I have guests on the show all the time. We're constantly talking about the fact that the aliens are here, and they are. You just, at this point, you don't need disclosure. I can just tell you that's true. But the thing is, if someone, in an official capacity tells the public, well, I think my late great friend Jazz Shaw used to come on the show. He was the UFO writer for Salem Media and the Debrief and a whole bunch of other kind of publications. One of the few things we disagreed on. He thought, well, the public's definitely there. The public's ready for this, but what he meant, and we had this discussion. What he meant was the American public. I think the American public's ready for it too. I don't know if the rest of the world is. I mean, we have. Do I have to tell you this? At least a third of the countries on Earth are living like 200 years behind us. I don't know if they can handle it. I actually don't know in the Muslim realm, in Islam, whether they can accept the fact that people are coming from outer space. I don't know. I think the Christian community seems to be set up to take this in, mostly because, and you got to give them credit. The Vatican has done a really good job presaging this. They have really, really stepped up in the last few years. They've regularly come out with people from the Vatican saying, that just because aliens live on other planets doesn't mean Jesus is real. And of course that's true. And you can make an argument, and it gets to the point of whether the other planets have their own Jesus, or also, there are discussions to be had, but the fact of the matter is it's not necessarily a religion killer. It isn't. But I don't know how the rest of the world would and will react. I don't know. I still don't know if this is going to happen. Supposedly, and this have been, the rumors around this have been flying even faster than they were before, that on July 9th of this summer, Trump is going to announce this, because that'll be the 79th anniversary of the Roswell crash. And supposedly that's the day he's going to now. May 1st has also been bandied about. And also, it appears that maybe this thing with Barack Obama coming out and saying aliens are real might even push the timeline up. But I think it's going to take this months to get this stuff together. First of all, you have no idea. There's so many black projects that are attached to this, and then the fact of the matter is you will need to talk about all of them. And I can't even remember if Conaway talked about this in the interview or offline, about the fact that there's way too much. There's too much over classification of documents in Washington, because it's very, very easy to classify documents as top secret or higher. Very easy. You stamp them, you sign a thing or something, and that's it. Things are classified way more than they actually have to be. So the paperwork, and this is what they're alluding to on News Nation here, the paperwork just to get through this is going to be enormous. I don't even know if they can get their shit together before July 9th. So, but this really bears repeating. So last weekend, Barack Obama came out and said the aliens are here. The exact quote was, "The aliens are real, but I've never seen one." That's exactly what he said. Then the next day he walked it back. He said, well, the odds are, because of the number of planets in the universe, that aliens exist. That's what he said. But then Trump comes out and says, well, he violated his security protocol. He violated his classification protocol by saying this. And then Jared Moskowitz, the representative from Florida, says very presciently, he says, Well, if it's not true, how could it be classified? He's absolutely right. You can't classify something that doesn't exist, you know? So, I mean, that's a tacit admission right there. So, anyway, I have no idea what's going to happen on this. Lou Elizondo, he's quoted in the video piece from News Nation. He says this. He says, if you think the Epstein files right now are kind of a hard topic and subject to try to break free into the public sphere, you ain't seen nothing yet. And he's absolutely right. That's absolutely correct. The bureaucratic mess of releasing the UFO files will completely dwarf this. It will. All right, and finally tonight I'm going to end with this because I love the pervy stuff. I'm an old man. I'm a perv in my heart, and that is a woman named Tegan Barnes told the Daily Star in the UK, and the UK press is just the craziest crap, man. It's like they've had over there they've had those what they call the page 3 girls. This is going back 50, 60 years. Although when that started, they were actually truly topless. Now they don't actually show any areola, or you don't actually really see anything. But when it started, they were, on the third page of every tabloid newspaper in the UK. One of them started it. I can't remember what. It might have been the Sun that actually started it. And they've all copied it. There's a naked chick. Why? Because guys buy newspapers and guys are horny. That's why. But anyway, Tegan Barnes said she is an adult film performer through social media in the UK, and she makes a lot of money rubbing newspaper print on her naked body. That's what she does. Here's her quote. People have a fetish for the newspapers and they like the sound and the feel. And I've had to film some videos of me naked and rubbing newspapers all over me. The print comes off, which is not great. I bet it isn't. So yeah, she makes a good deal of her living rubbing newspapers on her naked body. And you thought your life was hard. No pun intended. Okay. Once again, our thanks to Tim Conaway for joining us today. All right. All right, we're taking off tomorrow. It's the State of the Union. That's not what I'm taking. Oh no, seriously, I can't remember if I told Conway this on the interview or not too. I think I did, about the fact that I don't know if I'm going to watch it. First of all, I'm going to be traveling. I'm taking the day off to go see my mother, and she does not live in the Minneapolis metro, so it's a long drive. So I don't know if I get back before the thing starts. But I don't really want to watch it. I should, because I do this, and we'll talk about it on Wednesday, and I'm sure I'll see the clips or whatever, you know. But anyway, so no show tomorrow. Wednesday, we're having shows Wednesday and Thursday. I'm almost positive who our guest is going to be Wednesday, but I'm not going to announce it because we haven't absolutely nailed it down. On Thursday, our guest is going to be our old caller Think. We've slightly changed the format of the show. If you haven't noticed, we're not taking live phone calls anymore. We're not. But Think is so damn interesting. I've invited him to come on and he wants to talk about AI, and God knows, I love talking about that. So he's going to be our guest on Thursday. And I think we're going to do this over the phone still, because I told him, I said, well, it's been working. Why change it? If he wants to call in with a camera, that's fine. I've given him this option. We'll find out. We'll set up. But he is going to be our guest on Thursday. Next week, we're taking Monday and Tuesday off. I got some family business. And I pretty much know who our guests are for Wednesday and Thursday too, but I'm not going to announce that because we haven't nailed that down yet either. So off tomorrow night, back on Wednesday night with some guy. I know who it is. I'm not going to say, but yeah, good times, huh? Yeah, okay. All right. By the way, our best to the people on the East Coast. It's a nasty storm. We're here in Minneapolis. We know how this works. The one thing about living here is we have this down to science. We do, everything's coordinated. The plows come out, all that stuff. That all happens. And we have basically missed most of the storms this year. It's amazing. The temperature's not been good. I mean, today the high was 20 and it was like 6 degrees this morning. It's not good. But so we've had some really cold weather, but we have really and we did have some snow for sure. We got about 6 7 inches like last week, but not anything usual like you guys get or like you guys are getting over on the East Coast right now. So I feel for you. I do. Good night, Uncle Donnie, wherever you are, and good night to you, wherever you may be. We're taking tomorrow night off, folks, Tuesday. We'll see you on Wednesday night. You take care, all right?